You're listening to episode 715 of the Father Bills Podcast. Welcome back. This week's episode is entitled, Being a Good Steward, given on the 28th Sunday in Ordinary Time, 2019. Well, this weekend we heard about the Samaritan lepers who were cleansed. Yet, only one returned. My friends, what is the percentage on return with the gift that God gave them? You know, they call it a ROI, or a return on investment. What was that? 10%. 90% received, actually 100% of them received God's gift. 90% didn't make any notice of it. That one Samaritan leper. Now, we need to realize this. First of all, they're Samaritans. Jesus was very kind. He called them a foreigner because they were in another territory of Samaria. But they were actually half-breeds. They were Jews that moved into that area and also intermarried. And so true Jews would not hang out with them. And so strike one. By the way, we hear, it's interesting because Jesus hangs out with them. As he approaches them, they stay at a distance. And they have what is called leprosy. Today, I think we call it Hansen's disease. But back then, it was a whole bunch of things. It could be if you had eczema or psoriasis. I have psoriasis. So when I come into the church, I should be saying, leper, leper. Aren't you glad that there's this 10 feet between me and you in the first pew, right? And you would be then sequestered outside of the population. So again, they approached. They asked for pity. And it's interesting, Jesus doesn't say anything but, go show yourself to the priest. Christ is so powerful that he can just will something to be, and it happens. And so, why did only one return? We can't know fully why the other 9 did not, but certainly the one returned out of love and gratitude. God so filled his heart that he felt compelled to express his love and gratitude to Jesus for what he's done for him. You know, and love has a way of doing that. When we truly are loved, hearts are changed. We are inspired when we are loved. We're inspired to do good things, and in return, without any other motivation. When true love has happened, we respond. But be careful, because sometimes we give with strings. I'm going to do this if you do that. See, that's not a steward's response. Steward's response is to give out of gratitude for all that God has given us. A steward in Spanish is un administrador, an administrator. We realize that nothing is ours. I dare you, what is yours? And if we really think about it, the answer is nothing. You may say, well, I paid for these clothes. Oh, yeah? Okay. How'd you get the money? Because I worked. Okay, yeah. And how'd you do that? Well, I went to school. Oh, yeah? And how'd you do that? And on and on and on until we get to the point where, and then I was born. And how did you do that? I didn't do anything. There wasn't a poll straw. There wasn't like, I'm going to pick out that family before I was born. God chose that. It's all his doing. That's a steward's response, recognizing that nothing is mine. All is a gift. That is our health, our stuff, our things, jobs, abilities, bank accounts, houses, family, friends, and indeed our very lives. And knowing that, we live as Christians in a very distinctively different way than the rest of our culture. See, a steward is not so concerned with their rights. Not that we don't have rights. But I mean, think about this. When you watch the television, we often hear about someone's violation of their rights, and there may be. But when's the last time you've heard about someone complaining about not doing their responsibility? Man, I really messed up. My responsibility was to do this. I should have done that. I imagine that in a court of law. Yeah, right? You're going to lose probably, right? But we're called to be people of stewardship, to recognize that all is a gift from God. This experience was so important to Luke, St. Luke, that he preserved it in writing for us to ponder. That was 2,000 years ago, and we're still thinking about it. It was that big of a deal. And so it offers us an opportunity to reflect, and we should, to examine then our actions, our motivations. Are we grateful stewards of all that God has given us? Or are we often bitter? You might have met some of those. How you doing? Rotten. Or are we the kind of people that have a sense of entitlement? This is my church. That's my pew. Step aside. And it goes on and on and on. That's my parking spot. How dare you park in my parking spot? I gave $10 for this church. It's mine. See, a sense of entitlement destroys our heart because we walk around as if we're victims of everything. And yes, people can be victims of horrible things, but this attitude of I'm a victim just walking around, hey, you touched me. Ouch. I'm going to sue you. Do we recognize that God wants us to have a life full? He doesn't want us to be walking around as a victim. I mean, again, if you have a car accident, maybe it was you were a victim of a car accident. But we must recognize that we are stewards. Everything that we have is a gift, and it can go away. Friday, I did a funeral for Brenda. Brenda was 39 years old. She has 3 kids. Her oldest, 19, Casey, who's in our youth group last couple of years. On her way home from work, a drunk driver had a head-on collision with her. The daughter was on the phone right before it happened, talking. And then they hung up, and then Casey said, I have a couple other questions, and kept calling and calling and calling. Mom never answered. She was dead. She died on the way to the hospital. And isn't it interesting, the drunk driver, guess what happened to him? Yeah, has a few injuries. In the homily, I asked us to pray not only for the victim, but also for the perpetrator, for a change of heart, to recognize this disease that they struggle with has now caused a deadly event. On the side of the family, this is a horrible way to learn that things can be taken away. That all we have is a gift, and gifts can be removed. Not that God wanted it. And this is that big question. Why do some things leave us? We want them. We sometimes grasp onto them, unfortunately, and hold on to them, assuming it'll never change. But we all know as we live our lives that things change. Horrible things can happen because people have free will and they choose poorly. See, we need to then look, okay, how can we be grateful for the life of Brenda? That's the conversation that we'd have at a homily in a funeral. By the way, her husband is a firefighter from Wolf Creek, which makes her actually an honorary firefighter. Do you know anybody that's married to a firefighter? Talk to their spouse, right? So when he'd go out on a call or something, she'd come to the firehouse and hang out and wait if he will come back. See how messed up this is? It's all backwards. But the wife of a firefighter knows the preciousness of their husband, or it's the way around, if she's a husband for a wife, how that spouse is precious to them because they may not come back. Anybody that goes and signs up for the military, families know this as well. Last Sunday, we celebrated the National Day for Fallen Firefighters, and I added to our prayers of the faithful and anybody that's in police work or first responders. My friends, everything is precious if we allow it to be, if we can see it. It's created by God, and it's supposed to glorify God and give us joy in our lives. And that means we need to be good stewards with our own lives. We have to say, this is my life, I'm going to do whatever I want. It's not going to hurt somebody else. It's a big lie. It is not your life, number one, and you can't do anything you want without consequences, because those consequences could be fatal. And so we look at our gifts, and we should then take them and say, okay, God, what am I called to do? Not what do I want to do? What do you want me to do? Sometimes I'm talking with people, we're asking questions about, well, what ministry do you want to be in? Because we're going to talk about that. Time, talent, and treasure. What ministry do you feel called to? What I didn't say is, what ministry will make you feel better? Because I've heard that. Well, I'm looking for purpose in my life. This will make me feel better. Whoa. This is all about that person. Imagine me as a priest, if that's why I went into the priesthood. At the first sign of difficulty, guess what I'm going to do? Or if you're a married person, I'm going to get into this because this person's going to, help me with something or whatever. Lots of strange motivations that can happen. And it doesn't happen. We bolt. But if we are called, and we know that we're called, then we're more likely to stay focused. Yes, this is difficult. I'm going to continue going forward because you've called me to this. Because the other one will create all that bitterness and a resentment and sense of entitlement and a grab for the rights. Where before, being called is about giving oneself away. Jesus himself came to serve, not be served. So God loves us and wants us to have a full life. And then that means we need to keep him at the center, not ourselves. And in fact, the church has been held up through the 2 millennia of her existence, not by bad stewards, self-centered people, or lukewarm Catholics. 2,000 years of Catholicism, of Christianity has happened because there have been Christians who have given themselves away. The blood of the saints is the seed of the church, a saint once said. And the Catholic Church has been the single greatest force of change in Western civilization. Because there was a lot of dedicated Christians. So this month I'm asking you to come on, ponder on, where do you stand on this? What's your stewardship? Where is your faith calling you to be involved in your faith? Here specifically at St. Anne. Where do you or may you want to or feel called to give of your time, talent, and treasure? Not out of a sense of a grumbling, I got to do this, but out of a sense of gratitude, a thankfulness. I feel called to do this. I'm a humble servant. Lord, I will do that. I'm not looking for a payback. Our Lord has done so much for us, it's impossible to imagine all the details. Again, let's take a lesson from the leper. He had in himself gratitude. He could have kept going and been grateful. Hey, that Jesus back there, that's pretty awesome. I'm going to keep going. No. He turned back to him. And Jesus said, your faith has saved you. I wonder what the other ones, they got healed, right? Don't know if they were saved. So God continues to work in our midst in ways we do not know. But I can tell you this, if you dare make a gift of yourself, the reason that we are here, then you'll be able to see your calling more clearly. You'll find out that life is not about yourself, and as you give yourself away, it happens to be more joy-filled, more fulfilling anyway. The goal is God, not ourselves. So let us keep him first and foremost in our hearts, minds, and actions. May we love each other with the recognition that Christ loves us and gave himself away for our salvation. Let us imitate him with that response of a true steward. And one of those ways is here at St. Anne, your parish, participating in giving of your time, talent, and treasure. So next week, starting actually tomorrow, this is Sunday, isn't it? Monday, we're going to send out a brochure that has a letter from me, a statement of accountability of our finances. An interesting chart is how many people give at certain ranges. Like from $0 to $5 is rather stunning, that number. And then a model or a sample of our commitment card. We do this every year. And you'll see almost every ministry. I think we're missing the crafting ministry, and that didn't get in there. But there's an other, and you can always write it in. It's full of ministries. And so the goal will be then, when you check mark that, please put your initials of the family member so we know if you have multiple people in your family who that is, so we can contact them. It takes about a month or so to collate all these for the different ministries. And every ministry, hello, listen, ministry heads and leaders, you're supposed to call these people. Please call them. I've had many, every year, somebody say, I check marked these boxes and nobody called me. I go, that's pretty sad. Sounds like that ministry is going down in flames, right? Because they're not looking for anybody new. They're navel-gazing, and that's a deadly approach to a ministry. So some will end. So this commitment card will come by at Mass, and I'll ask you to fill it out, or Father Archie will. And then just between now and then, I ask you to pray about this. Pray about what God is calling you to, because maybe you need to change something, whether it be financially or a commitment of time. Stuff is going on in our lives, right? Maybe you need to cut back on something and increase another thing. I don't know. That's something for you to decide. But do it not with just, by the way, like next week, I forgot about this. Send it to prayer. Lord, what am I being called to do by you? And let that percolate through the rest of the week. I want to close with a quote from now Saint John Henry Newman. I encourage you to learn about him. He was part of the Anglican Church and was part of the Oxford movement, trying to strive to bring Catholic teaching into the Church of England. He had to leave eventually the Church of England and became Catholic and was quickly ordained and made a bishop and a cardinal. And he worked very hard to be in concert with both churches, the Church of England and the Catholic Church. He said this: God has created me to do him some definitive service. He has committed some work to me which he has not committed to another. I have my mission. I never may know it in this life, but I shall be told it in the next. I have a part in this great work. I am a link in a chain, a bond of connection between persons. He has not created me for naught. I shall do good. I shall do his work. I shall be an angel of peace, a preacher of truth in my own place, while not intending it, if I do not but keep his commandments and serve him in my calling. God bless you all. Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Father Bill's Podcast. I don't mention this very often, and I'm not sure if I have really fully done it, but you can get my podcast in many different places. You can get it on the Android app, of course on Apple. They have their now podcast app that's separated out of iTunes. You can go to, the other places like iHeartRadio, radio.com, Spotify, Libsyn, the source of my podcasts anyway. That's kind of an easy way to go. There's a wizard player, there's YouTube, and you can go to my website, fatherbill.org, FRBILL.org. And all of those places are good to be used, and you can find my podcast there. Just search for my last name, Holtzinger. You might search for Father Bill's podcast or William Holtzinger. A lot of different opportunities or ways to do it. So if you go to my website, you can email me right from the webpage, fatherbill.org. Go to the webpage there, and you can also connect with my social media connections, which are Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And I admit there's not a lot on Instagram. Facebook is a place that regularly I post the latest of the podcast, but also there I post some other things of interest to the faith, and you're welcome to respond or connect with me that way. And until next time, may God bless you and have a great week. Bye-bye.